So this is the first thing that he does. So you can see the boss will like spin this way. After he does that, he'll always do the fire hula hoop and the fire breath. So when he spins like this, you don't want to follow him directly because he'll do this breath move, right? And on eye level, if you get hit by this breath, you actually get destroyed. Like you actually lose more than half your HP. It hurts a lot. So this is why you bring Sacred Charm here, because it leaves a fire dot debuff on you, which can be cleansed. So this is my first tip, is that if you're playing a support, if you're playing a paladin, you kind of you almost want to play it like Helton, where you hold your cleanse for this kind of move, because like the shield utility of holy protection is not that great, in my opinion, because like the shield might soak one auto attack or like one regular attack, but the fire does so much damage. It does so much damage to the point where people actually bring Sacred Charms in hell mode. So yeah, Purify Rune, highly recommend. Also like Sacred Charms to charm your friends. If you're a paladin, you just like, if you see people get hit by the fire, you see that they get a debuff. Like obviously these guys don't get hit, but if you see the debuff up, you just immediately hit cleanse, and you turn this pattern into a pattern that's not that dangerous. The fear of the fire is really dangerous. Which skill can support have Purify on? Bard can probably put on like Guardian Tune. Yeah, Sound Shock, it would be the best one, because Sound Shock is, you cast it so frequently, you have more chances to prop Purify, right? But if you put it on Sound Shock, you lose Conviction Judgment, which is pretty powerful. But I mean, if you're like getting shit on to the point where you need Purify that frequently, then just put it on Sound Shock and it's not a big deal. Any of the fire patterns that we'll look at in gate 1 to 3, you really want to have something out for the fire, because ideal situation is no one gets hit. But what I'll tell you right now, what's going to happen is a lot of DPS will see the boss dash away and they'll just immediately run at the boss. And then what's going to happen is they're going to get hit by the fire, either the fire breath in front of him or one of the hoops, or they'll underestimate how much damage this shit does and they'll just tank it, and then they'll lose half their health. And everything I'm saying, by the way, only applies really if you're like 1480, below 1480. Like if you're 1480 something, 1490, 1500, obviously it hurts a whole lot less, right? But if you're on eye level or like a little bit above eye level, it hurts a lot. So as a support, Paladin, Savior Cleanse for like fire, I think is really nice. And Bards can Guardian Tune to mitigate the damage. Obviously, Bards can't cleanse, but Guardian Tune will soak up 30 to 50% of the damage from the fire, right? You can also Rhapsody people who you see get hit by fire, or Wind of Music them. Purify Rune destabilizes this? Well, depends. You still can't really get hit, because if you're tanking the fire, the dot gets constantly reapplied to you. So even if you purify the dot off, like it's RNG, right? But if you purify it off and you get hit again, you just get the dot again. So it's like, you really have to like not get hit. Purify will help, obviously, but it's not like you can just stand and everything with Purify. On which cases Bard need the debuff tripod on Guardian Tune? Basically all of them. There's a lot of debuffs in Clown, a lot of CCs. So you never not use debuff on Guardian Tune. The other tripod sucks anyway, so unless you're running like level 7 Guardian Tune, which is really bad, you will always bring debuff. It's really good in Clown. It's really good. And then these patterns, like the normal patterns, they don't really matter. Like you just want to make sure you get gauge as much as possible as a support. Oh, this mech as well. So this mech is a free DPS pattern, but again, the fire hurts a lot. This is another fire mech. So if you notice a pattern here, every mech with fire in it hurts like a bitch. That's why you cleanse and DR and charm is really important, to the point where in gate 1 you could bring both charm and panacea, but he'll put his staff down on the ground and you'll see this puffs of smoke come out. That's when he's gonna do the fire mech, and the place behind him is safe. So you see the blue thing here, that's behind him, right? So I'll show you again. So he takes his staff out, slams the ground, you see the puffs of smoke come out, that means the fire's coming out. You want to walk behind him. So this is free damage, right? If you're a back attacker, if you're anyone like range, for example, this is absolutely one of the best damage patterns that you have, because he doesn't do anything and he just turns. As long as you can stand behind him and follow the fire, it's absolutely free damage. But if you get hit by the fire here, you actually get destroyed. Again, any fire pattern does so much damage. So what you can do, I would recommend not Guardian Tuning for this one, because most of the time your Guardian Tune is on cooldown. In Clown, Guardian Tune is so good that like it's never off CD, because there's so many patterns where you want a Guardian Tune. You have to pick and choose kind of like what you're going to Guardian Tune and what you're not going to Guardian Tune. So what you can do is you can, as a bard, this is a really advanced thing to think about. If you plan to do hell modes in the future, like Hell Vicus and Hell Clown, a lot of patterns are really dangerous, but at the same time, if you can dodge that pattern or like mitigate the damage of that pattern, it's actually a really, really good damage window. I think like, so if you've done Vicus before, think about Vicus Gate 1, the pattern in the room where he does the front back pattern, like he's standing still, right? So it's actually a really, really good damage pattern, but the front back thing does so much damage that, like, especially in hell mode, that you can't tank the move to do damage, which means that like even though it's a really, really good time to do damage, because the attack is so dangerous, you actually can't go in to get hit. And same for this, right? Like the one we're looking at right now, it's a really, really good time to do damage, but if you're scared, if you have to make sure you dodge the fire, so it's dangerous to go in. And so in these situations, not just like this pattern specifically, but if you apply this knowledge to like other moves, what you can do as a support is you can use your abilities to create a damage window that otherwise didn't exist. So for Hell Vicus, the front back pattern, what you do is you put Rhapsody and Godsend behind the boss. So the DPS dealers can get in position while the boss is doing the front swing, and then they sit in your Rhapsody and do damage, back attack damage, and they just soak the backswing with super armor, right? So what you do is like you turn a pattern that normally you won't be able to hit the boss there because you can't stand behind the boss, you'll get hit on the way back, right? Into a damage pattern. And same for this, like you can put Rhapsody down, and this is a good pattern of Rhapsody because everyone's stacked together. And so normally in this pattern, you get like maybe one spell off before the boss. So if you watch this, normally you get one spell off, and then you see you have to walk the other way. Like you have to follow the fire, right? So if you're a back attacker, because you have to move, so you lose your like second and third spell, even though the boss is not moving, because you have to dodge the fire. But if you Rhapsody and Godsend behind the boss, it basically means that your back attackers can stand there and just soak. Especially, it's really, really good if you're a paladin, because not only can you Godsend after they get hit by the fire, you can cleanse them as well. So it basically, instead of having to dodge a fire, they can sit here, like the Deadeye can sit here with 100% confidence. In this situation, the paladin actually use Awakening, which is the same thing, right? It doesn't matter what spell you use, as long as you use some kind of spell to turn this pattern into a safe pattern. Rhapsody and Godsend are really, really good here because everyone stacks behind the boss. Where normally, like for the fire, like if we go back, like this pattern, like you can't Rhapsody this pattern. Look at where everyone's standing, right? How can you Rhapsody here? So, and then the patterns like this are really good because everyone stacks together. So that's like, I would like Rhapsody or Godsend here. And then these are just dodge patterns. Like you don't really have, there's nothing really special about these patterns as a support. It's just about dodging as a DPS. This is the first roulette mech. This is also a really good DPS pattern. While he's in the roulette, you can still hit him for full damage. There's no DR or anything. So if you're standing on the correct slice, it's literally a free damage pattern. So as a bard or a support, while you're doing the roulette, don't just AFK. Like I see a lot of supports when they're doing mechs, they just dodge and they like their hands are off the keyboard. One really good example, I'm sure you'll know what I mean, is like Vicus Gate 2. You know when she does the waffle? Good DPS players can still hit her while dodging the waffle and the flame walls. But a lot of supports I see, they just AFK in the safe spot and they don't do anything. But like you should be constantly applying your debuff and playing attack buff in that time, because the DPS that are good are actually still able to hit the boss. And the same thing applies for this. Don't just like AFK on your heart or your diamond or whatever. Be like, yeah, there's a mech, right? You should be sound shocking and casting, like you should be applying your debuff, you should be playing your attack buff, you should be hitting the boss to get gauge. Even though it's a mech, you should not be AFK. When you see him like start to jump up on this ball like this, you have so much time to hit the counter, so make sure you actually go for this. If you I mean, this is a hell mode video, so they're not gonna miss the counter, but basically if the boss jumps on this ball and you don't counter him, he will like follow one person on the ball and like shoot fire at them. This is the same pattern that you get in Oreha. What you want to do, if you miss the counter as a support, you want to check your CDs. If you have like Rhapsody or Godsend, or like you're just like a Giga Chad Paladin who's like super tanky, you want to just run in front of the ball and tank it, especially if you have heavy armor. If you're like on eye level and you don't have level 3 heavy armor, or if you're on eye level and you have heavy armor but you know you're like half health, you can actually still die from that. So don't be like super overconfident. But what you can do is you can either Rhapsody the guy who's being chased, because it does a shit ton of damage, and if you tank the ball as well, it's also free damage because he gets stunned. So this is pigeons. So we will watch this again, but basically whenever he disappears like this, he will like teleport and he'll do a sound effect. By the way, if you don't play with sound, I really recommend turning your sound on. There's a lot of audio cues in Clown that tell you what move he's gonna do. So the pigeon mech happens when he disappears, but the animation for this is honestly a little hard to see, because there's always so much shit on the screen. But he actually, like, there's 2 sound cues that tell you he's doing pigeons. So really, like, turn your sound on. And then basically when he disappears, everyone wants to stack up together like this. And the reason being because he'll reappear at a certain place, pick one person and shoot pigeons at them. And the pigeons stun you as well as give you a ton of gauge. So what happens is he'll reappear, and then immediately you want to dash to his side, because the pigeons fan out in front of him and then they come back in a circle and they go behind him. So if you're standing in front of him, you get shotgunned by all the pigeons. Not only will you get stunned, you take a massive amount of damage, and they all give you a ton of gauge. So if you get hit by more than like 2 pigeons, it's basically you're screwed. You're either a clown or you're dead. And you don't want to stand behind him because the pigeons loop around and come back inside of him. So you want to immediately go to his side, and this is free damage pattern right here. When I was doing Clown in the past, I would always Guardian Tune on pigeons, and the reason that I thought that was good before, it's not bad, but the reason I did it before was because the pigeons stun you, right? And if you have Guardian Tune, it lets you tank one of the stuns, because stun is a CC and Guardian Tune blocks CC, right? But the more I did Clown, the more I realized like Guardian Tune is just so much better when you use it for like the fire. And if I have to save my Guardian Tune for the pigeon mech, like let's say you get a fire mech but no pigeon, right? Do you save your Guardian Tune or not? It's kind of like ambiguous. And so that kind of playstyle ended up making it more difficult for me in the long run. So what I do now, what I would recommend to you now is to not use your Guardian Tune for the pigeon. If everyone's stacking together and everyone like has their sound on, or like, you know, is actually at their keyboard and not asleep, it's pretty easy to dodge pigeons. All you have to do is go beside them, right? And the reason that Guardian Tune is actually not that great is because it soaks the stun, but that's it. If you get hit by 2 pigeons, you get stunned anyway, right? Because Guardian Tune only soaks 1. And even if you soak the stun, you still take a ton of damage, which I guess Guardian helps with. But the more important thing is that you get a lot of gauge from this pattern. So even with Guardian Tune, you still get so much gauge that it's just better to use Guardian Tune on fire. So I recommend not using Guardian Tune for this mech. And same thing with Paladin Holy Protection, right? Like you can save your shield to cleanse the stun off, but again, like if you're saving your Holy Protection for this, like, and he uses the fire mech, what are you gonna do? Not cleanse? So I recommend for this pattern, even though you can use your spells to do something here, I recommend not using them, because your spells are better used on other patterns. If someone gets hit by the stun, so be it, right? Like you can Sacred Charm them or whatever. And if they turn into a clown, they turn into a clown. You can't stop that no matter what spell you use. And the damage, while high, is not enough to kill unless they literally like stand in front of the boss and tank all the pigeons. So I recommend not doing anything special here, just dodge. So this, see here, this is the fire breath, right? So you see, as soon as you see him like spin away in one direction, you know the fire breath is coming. So first things first, you don't want to you want to stay away from him, because if you're too close and he fire breaths you, it's a shit ton of damage. And then here you want to just Guardian Tune, right? You see the damage? Like look at this. The Deadeye is full health. I know it's a Deadeye, but still, look at the damage. He gets hit by, look here. So in this frame, he gets the debuff on him. You see the fire debuff, right? Let's look at it frame by frame. He gets the first tick, this 15k damage to him, right? And then another 12k behind, right? Look at this. Look at the damage. So here he by the time he walks out of the fire, like there's another 2 ticks for 30k. By the time he walks out of the fire, he went from full health to 25%. Like I'm literally going through frame by frame. If you watch it in real time, like look at this, look at his HP. It's gone. It's fucking gone. Like you have to pot right away, and if you don't even like you actually just get destroyed. So this is really like why support, if you like Rhapsody or like Guardian Tune or anything here, like it helps a lot. Expert a must for Cuckoo? I wouldn't say it's a must, but Expert is what really good in Cuckoo. But mostly Agile Cast is huge. It's not that big because like you have plenty of time to react. Like look at this. If you know the tell, look. The boss, as soon as you see the boss spinning, you can just press you press Guardian Tune. By the time the boss stops moving, your Guardian Tune is already on. And then look, even before the fire comes out, look how much time there is. Like the hoops appear, like he spins, then he waits, then the hoops come out, and then the fire comes out. So like you have so much time if you're like paying attention. You don't need Agile Cast. Obviously, if your reaction is slow, then yeah, Agile Cast helps. But again, this pattern is also like it's the same pattern as Oreha, right? Where he does all the balls on the ground. You just want to dodge. Guardian Tune goes a long way here. Guys, Guardian Tune is so broken. It's like 50% DR if you use the tripod for everyone on your screen. So like, and it comes out like instantly, and it has super armor. Like it's actually disgusting ability. But for this mech particularly, it's not like, oh, we have Guardian Tune, I'm gonna AFK, right? Because these things still give you gauge, so you have to dodge. But like getting gauge and turning into a clown is a lot better than just dying to this. And Guardian Tune helps people not die. And so if you have Guardian Tune off CD, and you get this pattern, it's really good to use it. Or you can use like Awakening, but Awakening is, you know, is a little slower, right? It's like there's a lot longer of a cast animation. So I prefer the Guardian here. Rhapsody is hard because everyone splits up right away, so it's hard to Rhapsody. And you don't want to stand there and channel Rhapsody because you get gauge from hitting a hit. So if you have Guardian, use Guardian. Paladins, like it's not that great because you don't have a fast AoE DR other than your Heavenly Blessing. It feels kind of bad to burn your attack buff for this pattern, so just kind of use your discretion. Most people, like I said, you won't die to this unless you're literally standing in like all the overlap, but anything you can do as a support to prevent like mistakes, it helps, I think. So if you have like anything, it's good to use here. So after this mech, there's all these little mini bouncy balls that spawn, and these bouncy balls split into little smaller bouncy balls, and getting hit by any of these bouncy balls means you're going to the afterlife. And so if you're gonna Guardian Tune or anything, it's really good if you do it at this point. It's insane. You see how much respect they're giving to these balls. They're not going anywhere near the balls. So it's kind of nice here. So a min-max thing that you can do as a support is that after the third roulette, and when everyone's running away from the roulette, it's really good to throw in a cheeky debuff here. So Light Shock or Sound Shock. And the reason being is that, especially for Paladin, the range on your debuff is really short. Like if you run off the roulette, you actually are too far away to hit the boss with your debuff. Like a bard can Sound Shock, so it's not a big deal. But what happens a lot of times is you'll run out with everyone else, and then the DPS will just instantly zoom back in with a movement skill and start hitting the boss, right? So for you though, because you don't really have a movement skill and you can't Sound Shock or you can't debuff from out here, it's really good if you pre-apply your debuff as you're running out, so that as soon as the DPS start running in and hitting, your debuff is already on, and all you have to do is hit your attack buff. It's just like, it's a really minor thing, but like you'll see what I mean when you do the roulette. Like if you run out of the roulette, you actually can't run back in that quickly because you don't have a movement skill. All right, gate 2. Nothing crazy about gate 2. There's a couple tricks that you can do, but mostly gate 2 is about knowing the mechanics, or like knowing the attack patterns. There's not really that much stuff where you're like, oh, this support ability will make a big difference here, but I'll go through it just in case there is. I know there's one off the top of my head. Most of gate 2 is like dodging the mech. One thing here is that you can get knocked off the stage in gate 2. So as a bard especially, and it depends on what kind of build your paladin is running, but as a bard especially, you have one movement skill, which is your spacebar. If you don't have your spacebar up, you're actually a sitting duck because you can get knocked off really easily if you don't have a spacebar. And as a bard, it's a little easier because you have so many super armors. But if you ever use your spacebar, you have to immediately check what super armors you have left. So if you spacebar, every time I spacebar, I look down and I say like, okay, what do I have? Because if I have Rhapsody, then I'm okay, right? If I get hit by a hammer and I can't dodge, I can just Rhapsody. If I have like Guardian Tune or Sonic, that's also okay because I can use those to super armor. In general, for supports and DPS as well, in gate 2, every time you use your spacebar, you should check your other abilities. You need to make sure you have something to deal with the hammer. So many retries happen when people get hit by a hammer and get knocked off. But you have to be really respectful of the hammer in gate 2 because if you get knocked off, there's no saving you. It's insta die. So you have to be conservative with, like, you should use your abilities, but you need to keep something in the tank is what I'm saying. So if you, like a lot of patterns will force you to burn your spacebar. If your positioning is like unlucky, you have to spacebar, right? So, but if you're spacebar, it's a really good habit to just think like, oh shit, I had to burn my spacebar. What do I have left in case I get hammered, right? If you don't have anything, you cannot commit to like a long animation move because like you will just die if you get hit by a hammer, right? As a beginner support, honestly, I would recommend you to just use your abilities as they're available. Obviously, like keeping in mind what I said about the spacebar and making sure you have a way to live through the spacebar. Other than that, focus on the fight and not your abilities, because while gate 1 and gate 3 there's like some tactics you can use with your abilities, because the fight itself is very like, it's not that intensive, right? So you have time to think about using your abilities properly. But gate 2, there's very little margin for error. The DPS check is really tight if you're on eye level, extremely easy to die, and there's a lot of chaos in gate 2. So if you can only focus on one thing, which if you're new probably that's going to be the case, focus on doing the mechanics properly and focus on dodging and surviving. Using your abilities comes after that, and if you're not sure, just use your abilities on cooldown and make sure, as long as you keep something so you don't die, right? Can you time stop? Yes, you can time stop. My advice, honestly, the best advice of how to play support in gate 2 is survive. Now that that's being said, if you want to take it a step further, this is the first mech that you'll encounter in gate 2, which is the red and blue mech. So before this mech happens, you see these like streaks of light that come out of the boss. That's a Medusa. So if you're like looking at the boss, you get feared, and obviously getting feared is bad because if you get feared, you don't make it in time to your circle, and either you die or both of you die if it's a red circle. So the way to do this mech is to look away from the boss by auto attacking, wait for the Medusa to finish, and then walk to the red ring. So if you look at what happens here, so the boss flies away, and then these symbols are not going to be in normal mode, so don't worry about them. But everyone will look away here. So you see everyone looking the other way. They auto attack. After the Medusa ends, then they run to their spot. So here, what you can do as a bard, not as a paladin, but as a bard, as soon as this shit happens, you just Guardian Tune. So I always Guardian Tune here. So as soon as I said I know the mech's happening, I Guardian Tune. That way, what happens is that if anyone looks in the Medusa, they don't get feared because Guardian Tune eats the fear, right? And so a lot of the time in a new group, people, one of two things happen. One, they have no idea about the Medusa, which is, you know, if they've never done the fight before, it's very plausible, and they just look at the boss and they get feared, right? So Guardian Tune stops that from happening. The other thing that happens is that people panic. So you have plenty of time to look away and then move. But what newer players do is that they just panic, and then they see the circle spawn, and they just immediately like, they look away for like 0.1 seconds, and then they start running, and then they get hit by the fear anyway because they moved too early. So if you're like want to take it to the next level as a bard and you Guardian Tune, it basically just provides an extra layer of insurance in case people panic or like they mess up. So this here as well. So during the bomb mech, the boss can do a Medusa as well. So again, same logic applies. It's better, like I said before, it's better for you to dodge first before worrying about your abilities. During this, the boss can also do a Medusa. Again, Guardian Tune is really, really nice here because when people are dodging, sometimes they panic and they look to the boss and they get feared. And they get feared on top of the bombs, they're dead. Or they turn into a clown. So Guardian Tune is nice. However, right, like if you like focus too much on your Guardian Tune and you get hit yourself, it's useless, right? So make sure you dodge first, and then if you have time or if you have like a good position, you can Guardian Tune. But it's not like the most important thing to do. A lot of the time, like if you think too much, if you like worry too much about how you're going to use your abilities in gate 2, you will just end up dying to some bullshit. So in gate 2 especially, just focus on living. Can you Sacred Charm Fear? Yes. So there's two items you can bring. You can either bring Sacred Charm or you can bring Sacred Bomb. The advantage about Sacred Bomb is that the range is a lot bigger. You can yeet the Sacred Bomb from across the screen to save someone from fear, but Sacred Charm, you have to be next to them. So Bomb has two advantages. You have to decide which one you want to bring. So Bomb is really good because one is you can throw from really far away, and the second thing is that Bomb only removes CCs because Bomb doesn't remove anything else but but CC effects. So it means that if you want to get rid of the fear, say throwing a Sacred Bomb guarantees you to get rid of the fear. But the Sacred Charm, the problem with Sacred Charm is that Sacred Charm removes any debuff, right? So not only do you have to be right next to the person with Charm, if the person has a fire dot and the CC on them, it's RNG which one you get with Sacred Charm, because Sacred Charm only removes one debuff. So that's like a thing to consider. So this is the Fire Breath pattern. So for the Fire Breath pattern, you have to stick next to the boss, and anytime you're forced to stay somewhere, you know, like in Vicus when the whales spawn and nobody can see them and you all have to stand on the bottom, that's like the same thing. Anytime you're forced to sit in one spot with something attacking you, it's very, very dangerous. So in Vicus, when you're all bottom for the whales, like I always Rhapsody as a bard, because it just makes it so like you don't get destroyed, because you can't dodge, right? You're stuck there. So this is the same logic. When they're all standing on top for the Fire Breath, or sorry, Cuckoo still attacks you. So this is a really good Rhapsody here, because they tank 3 missiles to the face, without Rhapsody, this does a shit ton of damage. Unfortunately, as you can see here, look at their gauge. Like they all have mega gauge because they're forced to tank the attack, but at least they didn't die. So when he shoots out these fire bombs like this, they leave behind a pool of fire on the ground. And so ideally, like as soon as you see him pull out the cannon, you run away so that you kite the pools away from the boss. Because in this kind of situation, when the pool's on the boss, the pool does a ton of damage. And so if you have like melee characters or like Deadeye or whatever, they literally cannot hit the boss and you lose so much damage. So this is one of the main reasons why the DPS check is so tight. Because if you get griefed with like the patterns, or like someone griefs you with the pools, it depends. Like if you have like more than 1 or 2 melee characters, nobody can hit the boss like ever. And everyone's just waiting for the pool to despawn or the boss to walk out. And there's a ton of these patterns that overlap. You get this pattern into the hammer smash. So like basically your DPS uptime is really, really low. Like there's a lot of ways that you can lose DPS uptime in this fight. So as a support, if this happens, like in this scenario, I would consider this as one of the situations where like you can turn a non-DPS pattern into a DPS pattern. If you put Rhapsody or Godsent down here, a DPS can squeeze in a couple moves while tanking the fire, or like you can just cleanse them afterwards with Charm. So my first thing about Gate 3 as a support is that when you're progging this, don't do it. But if you're making, after you like feel like you have enough practice and you're making serious attempts to clear the raid, I really recommend popping Stimulant before you go in. And so until now, there probably hasn't been a raid other than Helton where you need to pre-pop a Stimulant as a support. Maybe you guys have been doing it, like real Giga Chads have been doing it, but objectively speaking, for like normal and hard Vulcan and Vicus, there's no situation where you need DPS that much. But for Clown, normal, unless you're mega overgeared or you're extremely experienced, you will run into DPS problems because of how random and chaotic the fight is. So once you have enough practice and you're making serious attempts, what I recommend doing as a support is drinking stimulants before you go in. Like right here, you drink a stimulant so that right when you fight the boss, you can pop your 3-bar buff or your aura with a dark bomb, and you just stack damage immediately to get to first Mario as soon as possible. Because the faster you get to first Mario, the less bullshit you have to deal with of like the HP reversal and stuff. So it helps. DPS actually helps a lot in Gate 3. Right when you walk in, you want to confirm what the boss is doing. So the boss will AFK for a second and he'll like, do some shit. So like this pattern, you'll figure this out later. But this pattern is like, God bless. This is one of the best DPS pattern in the whole phase. He's like literally goes AFK and he breathes fire. All you have to do is stand behind him and DPS. So if you get this pattern, you throw Dark Bomb on him right away, and it's like you pop your damage buff. Fire pattern again. This is not a DPS pattern unless your support does something. Again, if your support doesn't cast any spells here, this is not a DPS pattern. If you get hit by the fire, you get destroyed. So this is HP reversal. When HP reversal happens, people get this debuff. When the debuff expires, their missing HP is swapped with their remaining HP. So if you're full health and you have HP reversal, afterwards you'll go down to like 1% health, right? If you have like 1% health and HP reversal ends, you'll go back to like full health. So HP reversal is a really, really annoying mechanic, and this is the main mechanic that makes you want to do more damage, because HP reversal is not a fixed HP. Like it doesn't happen at a certain point. It's random. So the more time you spend fighting him, the more likely he is to cast HP reversal, because it's like a random attack that he throws out. And the more annoying thing is that every second HP reversal that he does, he will do a clown face on the ground that like stuns you. So if you see more HP reversals, he does more and more damage, and then like it just gets harder and harder. It's a snowball effect. So basically, when HP reversals happening, you do not want to shield as a bard. You don't want a Guardian Tune, you don't want a shield, you don't want to do any of that nonsense, because the whole point of HP reversal is you want to quickly take damage so that you're low HP. You want to get to like 20 to 30% HP so that after the HP reversal ends, you go back up to like 70 to 80%. You don't want to get super greedy. Like I see some people, they go all the way down to like 5% HP because they want to get a bigger heal. But what happens is like you're 5% and you get hit by one thing and you die. And like before the HP reversal finishes, that's no bueno, okay? So you want to play conservatively, go down to like 20-30% as fast as possible, and then until the HP reversal wears off, you want to just dodge and stay alive. So the reason as a bard, why don't you want to play Guardian Tune is because people are trying to take damage as fast as possible. Guardian Tune halves the damage that you take. So the way if you play Guardian Tune, people have to tank twice as long, which makes it more dangerous because the HP reversal might wear off before they've taken enough damage. Same thing with shield, right? If you shield someone with HP reversal on, they have to chew through your entire shield before they can start lowering their HP. So if they're like 80% HP and you give them a fat shield, you have like expert 3, by the time they get rid of your shield, there's only like a few seconds left of HP reversal. So instead of going from 80 to 20 and then going back up to 80, they go from like 80% HP to like 50% or like 60%, and then they end up with like half health or lower after HP reversal finishes, so they're forced to pot. So as a bard, when you say HP reversal, you don't press any of your like support abilities. You don't press like Guardian, you don't press Rhapsody or anything, and then you wait until after you see that they're low HP, right? At some point they'll have like 30% HP or 20% HP, and then they'll walk out of the fire so they don't die, and at that point that's when they're the most vulnerable, because right, they're waiting for the HP reversal to finish so they can get their heal, but they're also like really low HP. So that's when you should use Rhapsody, Guardian Tune, Godsend, shield, whatever, to make sure that people don't die while they're waiting for HP reversal to finish. This Albion mech as well, if you get hit by the lightning, you get electrocuted and you end up taking a lot of damage or dying or turning into a clown. So Guardian Tune obviously is really good here because it lets you soak one of the lightning things if you get hit by accident. This was also really good by the bard, as you can see here. So remember I mentioned that every second HP reversal he does an AoE clown face attack. So as they know they've seen 2 HP reversals. They've been keeping track, right? So as soon as the boss teleports to the middle here, you see the bard immediately cast Rhapsody, and because when he's doing this mechanic, you're silenced, so you can't do anything. But because Rhapsody lasts 3 seconds, like it lingers for 3 seconds, right? They basically take no damage from this AoE, which is really, really good. Or else they would have taken a lot more damage. So in this situation, you can see that the bard is actually in the maiden. If you are in the maiden as a bard, which will happen quite a lot of times, because you know it's 33% chance that you're in the maiden. After the 2 DPS stagger the boss, you can see here the 2 DPS stagger the boss, and after they stagger, it's free damage time. So right here they stagger, right? And as soon as they finish staggering the boss, you get free from the maiden. And so a lot of bards will like run all the way to the boss and then start casting their abilities. The problem with that is that while you're running to the boss, it's actually a free damage pattern for the DPS that are staggering. So what you should do is walk to the middle, because the range of your abilities is so big. You can walk to the middle and cast Heavenly Tune or whatever, like God's Wrath. What's it called? God's Wrath. You can walk to the middle and cast your attack buff here because it will still reach the DPS, and that way you save the 5 seconds or 3 seconds or whatever it takes you to walk over, and they get an attack buff while they're hitting the boss for free. Okay, this is Showtime. So Showtime is a whole mech that you'll have to learn, but the only important thing is coming up, and I'll show you what it is. So after the 4 rotations, a bomb will spawn, and there'll be 2 bombs that spawn, 1 on each side. You have to lure him to blow up the bomb, or else it's a wipe. And so after this, you go to the other side and you'll blow up the other bomb. And here this is where it's important. Okay, so because of the way that Mario works, the person who's going to the 3rd Mario has to get half gauge before the Mario happens, or else they won't have enough gauge to transform into a clown in time. And so the best way to get half gauge after Showtime is by tanking the last 2 hits of Showtime. So you see here, after the 2nd bomb, the outer ring explodes and then the inner ring will explode. So you see here, out, boom, and then in, boom. So as a person going to the 3rd Mario, obviously most of the time it'll be the support, but you want to tank 2 of those yellow explosions to get half gauge. And so because they do a lot of damage as a support, what you want to do every time is after the first bomb explodes, like look, first bomb, go to the other side and stand in front of the second bomb. Here you want to cast either your Awakening or Rhapsody. Guardian Tune is not enough because it's only 50%, right? Rhapsody is 75 and Awakening obviously is 0 because you have such a big shield. So what you want to do here is you want to use some kind of ability, either Rhapsody or Awakening or Godsend or Awakening, so that the person going to third Mario can tank the 2 explosions that they need to tank without losing a shit ton of HP. Otherwise, it's just doing the back. Oh, this is the last thing actually. So do you see how for the Mario, so this person's going to third Mario. So to go into the third Mario, they need to tank the flame tower to get Gage to turn into a clown. Anytime you have to tank fire, you're getting chunked. So as a bard or a paladin, you have to make sure you apply some form of DR on the guy going into the Mario every time. So you see how he's tanking it? The bard has Guardian Tone on him and he puts the heal down and then he Rhapsodies. Paladin can Godsend, obviously. They can Holy Land if you bring it. They can Heavenly Blessing. But the person going into the Mario, they need some kind of support or they take too much damage. If they don't have any support, they go into Mario with like half HP, which is really, really dangerous. So in bingo, right when you see this screen, you want to ask everyone how many potions they have left. A lot of times if you're newer, you get to bingo with like very little potions left because you take so much damage in the fight. And so as a bard, as a support, really, I mean, paladins don't really have a choice, but as a bard specifically, if your party doesn't have that many potions left, you need to exclusively play 1 bar heal, because unless everyone has like a ton of potions, the only thing that stands between you and killing the boss is surviving. Damage does not matter at all in bingo because every time you do the bingo, he takes 13 bars of damage. So as long as you survive, even a bard can solo this phase. Okay, so this is the mech. So when the boss disappears like this, it's like the pigeon tail. When the boss teleports like this, you want to look away from the boss because he'll turn around and do this Medusa. If you're looking at him, unlike in P1, you don't want to look at him. If you're looking at him, you get feared. And obviously getting feared is really bad because if you get hit by the hammer, it instantly dies. If you drop the bomb in the wrong place and because you're feared, obviously it's not good. You fuck up your whole board, right? Your bingo. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in bingo really quickly. So not getting feared is an absolute priority. As a bard, if you see that he's doing this mech, just use your Guardian Tune, okay? Like Guardian Tune will save anyone who gets caught out by fear because they'll eat the fear, right?